Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Max from the Innisfil Idea Lab and Library. In today's Code Jams, we are going to learn how to use arcade.makecode.com to make an arcade game. MakeCode Arcade is a web-based code editor that uses blocks to compose novel arcade games. It's a lot of fun, and once you load up arcade.makecode.com in your web browser of choice, we can just hit that new project button and give our game a name. My game is going to be a Dodge the Aliens style game, so we're going to create that. MakeCode Arcade looks just like this once loaded, and it has a few elements that we're going to go over. There's the large blank canvas here. That's where you will create your masterpiece by moving blocks around and composing your game. To the left is the simulator, where any updates you make onto the canvas will automatically be shown here, which is quite nice. The center is our column of tools. We're going to call this our toolbox, and each individual item here is a drawer in the toolbox. Lastly, if you press the question mark, you can see the full documentation for MakeCode Arcade, and that loads right inside the code editor, which is not a bad thing to have on hand. So we'll close that for now, though. So, first things first, we're making a game, we need a player. To start making your player, click on the Sprites drawer in the toolbox and pull out the Set My Sprite to Sprite of kind player and click that into there. This block does a lot of things for us automatically. It creates a variable called MySprite and gives it the kind of player. We will go over kinds more soon, but for now, we feel very lucky and glad that this automatically makes a sprite of kind player for us, which is great. The blank gray box is where we will compose our character. I really do encourage you to draw out your own fun character of some kind, but for now, for expedience sake, we'll head to the gallery and then just choose a character of our own. How about a warrior princess? Not bad. Once you have either drawn your character or selected one from the gallery, you can press the Done button. And so here we have it. So in MakeCode Arcade, a sprite is any image that is typically 16 by 16 pixels that is controlled in the game. You might notice, controlled in the game, haha, the character doesn't actually move yet. Our character is here, lovely little sprite, but nothing happens. In order to code movement for our character, we're going to open the controller drawer and pull out a Move My Sprite with Buttons block. We're going to click and drag that and click it underneath the Set My Sprite. It's important to do this second because it's moving My Sprite, and you can't move My Sprite before you have set that to exist. You can't move something that doesn't exist. With these two blocks here, we already have a perfect walking simulator. We can now move our character around, but of course nothing else happens just yet. It would probably be a better game if there was some enemies to speak of. In order to generate enemies at a regular interval, we're going to use the game drawer and pull out on-game update every 500 milliseconds. The on-start block only runs once at the very beginning of the game, and it sets up our character. The on-game update block, however, whatever we put in here, will happen every 500 milliseconds, every second, or whatever value we want to type in there. Let's start with 600 milliseconds. To create enemies, well, we need more sprites. So we head to the Sprites drawer, and we look for some projectiles. Projectiles in MakeCode Arcade are a nice little built-in tool that'll set things to automatically generate by default from the top left corner at a particular speed. And so nothing seems to be happening now because the projectile doesn't have any sort of image associated with it. So let's find something fun. Again, of course, please draw your own. But for now, I'm just going to pick something from the gallery. How about a duck? There we go. There's nothing more evil than a flying duck, of course. So all the better for us in our game to have some sort of duck alien. So by default, the initial coordinates are 0, 0. MakeCode Arcade uses a grid of coordinates starting at 0, 0 in the top left corner. Higher numbers go right for the x value, and higher numbers for y go down the screen. So the initial position is 0, 0, and then what's happening here, this variable projectile of the kind projectile with an image of a duck is coming from the side with a certain velocity. So Vx is velocity x, Vy is velocity y, x again left to right, y is up to down. Velocity is speed plus direction. So in the x direction, it's going to move 50 speed, and then it's going to move 100 down. And so with those two speed values, pixels per second to be precise, so 50 pixels per second left to right and 50 pixels per second down, we get a duck that looks like this. In order to add a little more character to the duck, let's make some of this movement random. And so I want the aliens to just kind of range straight down from the sky. And so I really don't want it to move left or right at all. I want 0 velocity x. And the y, of course, needs some adjustment here. We're going to open up our math drawer and pull out pick random 0 to 10. We want our game not to be so easy. So here's our little 0 to 10 ducks. It's a little easy to dodge. So let's change those values to anything between 10 or maybe, 40 to 100. So 40 pixels per second to 100 pixels per second. Each time a duck is generated, every 600 milliseconds, a duck will fly out at one of those speeds. It's still not moving left to right, of course. It's just moving straight down at a variable speed depending on which value was chosen in pick random. Of course, still not much of a game. Let's make our ducks start at a variable position left to right. So back to our sprites drawer, we want to set one of our sprites to have a different x position. By default, it sets my sprite, which is our main character, not what we want. Change that to the variable named projectile. And again, x is still 0, which is exactly what was happening before. We can change the value by hand to be anything we want. So 65 will be somewhere in the middle of the screen. That's maybe good for like a wall of fire in some sort of game that the player has to kind of move their way through. But for us right now, it's not really adequate. We're going to head back to the math drawer and get another random number from pick random and slot that into our little bubble there. So we'll start maybe at 10 and go all the way to 150. This will send the starting point to be anywhere from here-ish, 10 to somewhere around here, 150. So now the player, as they move around the screen, has a little bit more to dodge, which is great. Of course, when the characters overlap, nothing quite happens. Also, I should say, you can use the keyboard keys to move your character around. You don't have to use the mouse on the joystick. So, we're moving around. Great. Nothing happens when they overlap. So, to make the game a little more gamey, we probably need a way for those collisions to be detected. Lucky for us, under the sprites drawer, there's a whole section just for overlaps. So, overlaps on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind player is a good place to start. These two red bubbles here, referring to sprites and other sprites, are placeholders really just set up to refer to any sprite that matches these kinds. So our first kind of player makes sense, and the other sprite that it overlaps in order for something to happen should be projectile. That's because, by default, this is set to the type of projectile, or the kind of projectile. So when our player overlaps with any other sprite of kind projectile, whatever we put in here is going to happen. For our purposes, it makes a lot of sense if under the game category, we bring up game over. Game over, lose. So, let's see what happens there. We have our character. Ooh, game over. Pow, pow, pow. Let's turn the sound back on so we get the full effect. Pretty good, pretty good. So, our player moves around, tries to dodge the duck aliens, and when they hit one, game over. You can make the game easier or harder in a number of ways. The simplest way probably is to change this value here. Instead of every 600 milliseconds, well, what if every 100 milliseconds? And we'll let the game update. Yeah, a little more difficult now. Ooh. If we want it to be easier, we can say 1 second, or every 1,000 milliseconds. So that means an enemy is only generated once every second. A little easier to play overall. The game on its own is reasonably complete in the sense that there's a way for your player to lose. Some quick ways to refine the game is just add a little more visual flourish. You may notice that our character has some black pants and it's a black background. So under the scene drawer, we can pull out a set background color to block. Let's make that the first block in our on start. And let's just set that to blue. For now, I'm pretty happy with this. And so what I would encourage you to do is to try to make your own game in MakeCode Arcade. And as you do, you can try to refine it further. If you're making a Dodge the Aliens games, just like this one, try to make it perhaps where the character has lives that run out instead of automatically losing. You could find a way to change the background color to perhaps a scene that you've illustrated. And if you want to go really far, you can maybe give your player some power-ups or things like that. Whatever you happen to do, make sure you share it with the library, of course. And so, thanks for joining us again today for this session of Code Jams, and I hope to see you again soon.